Moonshiners, Season 14, Episode 5. The morning sun cut through the dense fog, hanging over the Smoky Mountains like a blade. Birds called in the distance, but the forest felt heavy, almost too quiet. Mark Ramsey adjusted the brim of his camouflage hat and gave Digger Maines a sidelong glance as the two tramped through the dew-soaked underbrush toward their hidden still site. "You smell that?" Mark asked, sniffing the air with a squint. "Yeah," Digger replied. "Smells like something ain't right." Their still site, hidden beneath a camouflage tarp and ringed by barrels of mash, was normally silent and undisturbed this early. But today, there were footprints in the mud, fresh ones. The tarp had been peeled back. A stack of white oak barrels was missing. Digger dropped to one knee, fingers skimming the disturbed soil. "Son of a, somebody's been here." Mark's jaw tightened. "That's 20 gallons of rye gone. Someone's been helping themselves as they stood in silence, surveying the damage. They'd dealt with poachers before. Bears, raccoons, even the occasional nosy hunter. But this was different. This was calculated. This was someone who knew where to look." Back at the truck, the pair tried to make sense of the theft. Digger pulled out a battered notebook. "We ain't got many folks who know this location," he said, ticking names off with his finger. "Us, of course. Josh helped carry them fermenters 2 weeks back. Maybe Lance?" Mark shook his head. "Josh wouldn't cross us. He knows better. Lance? Maybe. But I've got a different gut feeling. Remember that fella Travis? Worked with Mike down in Blount County? He was snooping around last month. You think he followed us? Wouldn't surprise me." They needed proof and a plan. Mark and Digger weren't ones to involve the law. Moonshine justice meant handling things your own way. First step, bait the thief. They set up a new decoy, still just down the ridge, half functional, half trap. They left a couple barrels of mash out in the open, easy pickings for someone watching. Then they waited. 3 nights passed. On the 4th, a snapping twig brought them to full attention. Through the trail cam's infrared lens, they spotted movement, figures. 2 of the bingo, Digger whispered. They watched as a lanky man crept toward the barrels. He wore a dark hoodie and carried a plastic funnel, clearly expecting to siphon something quickly and quietly. It was Travis, and he wasn't alone. A younger man, maybe early 20s, waited nearby with a blue pickup truck idling off the road. "That's Mike's nephew," Mark growled. "Knew I recognized that rust bucket." Digger grinned. "Time to make our presence known." Mark and Digger emerged from the shadows with flashlights blazing and shotgun barrels low and steady. The thieves froze like deer in headlights. "Well, look what we got here," Digger said, calm and menacing. 2 raccoons caught with their paws in the corn bin, Travis stammered. "It's not what it looks like." "Oh, it's exactly what it looks like," Mark snapped, stepping closer. "You've been poaching our liquor." The young man turned to run, but Digger fired a warning shot into the air. "Don't even think about it," boy. Mark shoved a barrel with his boot. "This here's felony theft. You know what that means in these parts." Travis raised his hands. "Look, we just needed some product. We were behind on orders and—" "Orders?" Digger barked. "You mean you've been selling our hooch?" That was the final straw. Moonshine wasn't just tradition, it was livelihood. Honor. A betrayal like this cut D Scene 5. A deal in the dark back at the still site. Mark and Digger tied the 2 men to a tree with zip ties, tight enough to discourage escape, but not enough to harm. "You 2 are gonna sit here and think about what you've done," Digger said, dropping a jar of moonshine into the dirt. "You don't get a drop till you sweat a little for hours. The pair sat under the trees as bugs nipped at them, and the moon climbed overhead. It was a lesson, and in Moonshiner country, lessons were earned, not given. By sunrise, Travis was apologizing like a Baptist preacher on Sunday. "I was wrong," he said. "We should have come to y'all. We messed up." Mark crossed his arms. "You owe us at least 40 gallons. Either you pay it back, or we let the rest of the boys know who can't be trusted." Travis nodded. "We'll make it right. I swear." In true mountain fashion, Mark and Digger let the men go with a strict deal. They'd rebuild the stolen stock themselves, under supervision. That meant hauling water, grinding corn, and cleaning mash barrels until their backs ached and their clothes stank of sour grain. For a week, the two thieves toiled while Mark and Digger oversaw every move. "Consider this your apprenticeship in humility," Digger quipped. By the end, the 20 stolen gallons were replaced, and then some. But the real payoff wasn't the liquor. It was the message. Don't mess with the old guard. With their operation secure again, Mark and Digger fired the flame as clear liquid poured into jugs. The Appalachian whiskey, spicy, smooth, and uncut, was back in flow. As the sun dipped behind the ridgeline, the two men sat on overturned buckets and sipped from mason jars. "You think they learned their lesson?" Digger asked. Mark chuckled. "If they didn't, they're dumber than a possum in a henhouse they clinked jars." "Toe tradition," Digger said. "Toe trust," Mark replied. And somewhere deep in the hollows of Tennessee, the hiss of fire under copper stills rose like a song, an old one, passed down by men who worked the land, trusted their own, and never forgot a betrayal. Next week on Moonshiner Stim takes a gamble on a new apple brandy recipe, while Josh and Bill track down a mysterious buyer offering double price, but with a catch. And tensions boil over as Mark and Digger receive word that their old rival, Jim Tom's apprentice, is back in town with a new still and an axe to grind. Would you like a visual scene breakdown or character guide for this episode? Moonshiners, Season 14, Episode 5. Mark and Digger confront liquor thief in the Appalachian backwoods. The moonshine game is as much about trust as it is about craftsmanship. And when that trust is broken, the mountains have a way of echoing the consequences. The episode opens with a cold morning fog rolling through the Tennessee hills. Digger Maines and Mark Ramsey are on their way up a rutted dirt trail to their remote still site, perched deep in a hollow only the most determined could find. A crow caws overhead as they bounce along in Digger's beat-up truck, a bed full of jugs clinking softly. "We've been working this still for 3 weeks solid," Digger says, eyes scanning the horizon. "Got a batch near perfect. This is the kind of run that pays for Christmas." Mark nods, sipping coffee from a stained thermos. "Only thing that could go wrong now is something going wrong." They pull up to the site, but something's wrong immediately. Digger steps out and freezes. "Mark," he says low. The camera cuts to their stash area behind a camouflage tarp. Several 5-gallon jugs are gone, the top thrown carelessly to the side. Footprints in the damp leaves lead off toward the ridge. "That ain't no animal," Mark mutters. "That's a dang thief." Breaking through the betrayal cuts deep. For moonshiners, stealing someone's liquor is the same as robbing their house and then torching it. It's personal. Mark and Digger stare at the disturbed area, disbelief slowly morphing into fury. "Some son of a bitch thinks he can help himself to our shine?" Digger growls. "Well, they just signed their eviction notice from this mountain." They radio Tim Smith, who's back in Virginia, and let him know what's going on. Tim's voice comes through crackly but concerned. "That's bold, boys. Ain't no newbie mistake either. Someone knew where to look." Mark and Digger agree. This wasn't random. Whoever took the shine knew what they were doing and where to look. Which means it's someone local. Following the trail, they spend the next day investigating. Using tracking skills passed down through generations, Mark studies the boot prints while Digger compares them to old photos they took at the site. A scrap of flannel caught on a branch and a cigarette butt nearby point to someone familiar with the area. Their first stop is a nearby cabin rented by a part-time shiner named Kenny Knuckles Rutherford. Knuckles has been trying to break into the business but lacks finesse and patience. The boys pull up to Knuckles' place late in the day. He's outside splitting wood, a little too surprised to see the afternoon. "Fellas," he says, glancing at the axe in his hand before setting it down carefully. Digger cuts to the chase. "You been up our way lately, Knuckles?" "Y'all know I wouldn't do that," he says, backing up. "I heard y'all had a good run going, but I don't mess with other folks' product." Mark eyes him. "Funny thing, someone did. And they wore boots just like yours." The tension crackles like a fire ready to jump, but Knuckles holds his ground and even offers an alibi. He was in Boone helping his cousin with a busted truck the night of the theft. It checks out later when Mark calls the cousin. For now, they cross Knuckles off the list, but not without warning him. "If we find out you lying," Digger says, "you'll wish all we did was take your still." Back at their home base, the boys go over their short list of possible suspects. One name jumps out: Clyde Hawkins, a washed-up shiner from the next county. Clyde once tried to sell fake moonshine at a local festival and was shamed out of the community. But folks whispered he never left the gang completely. They get word from Popcorn Tate, an old-timer with ears everywhere, that Clyde's been seen in the area again. Worse, he's been bragging at a roadside bar about premium white lightning at below-market prices.